Greetings, guys. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Monette, and this is my channel, Evolve with Monette. For those of you that are new here, I am a professional intuitive empath. For those of you that are regulars, welcome back. We're going to jump right into the video. If you are interested in working with me, you can find me on evolvingwithmonette.com if you're interested in booking a reading or getting any clarity on any situation. Today, I want to talk to you about something that my angels woke me up at 3:33 to talk to you about, and it is about a woman, we're going to call her, named Judy. Now, this is really about my soulmate and the powerful lessons that he taught me. My soulmate obeyed the rule of camp, which is that he left me better than he found me. Yeah, I was a Girl Scout for many years, 9 years, and that is the rule. As a Girl Scout, we do honor, swear, and obey to leave things in a better way. And that meant that if we camped, we actually would pick up the trash that not just we left or created, but that others left there before us. The rule of camp. This applies when you're dealing with a May December romance where someone is older or younger, or there is an incredible power shift or dynamic where you have a sugar mama or a sugar daddy. The rule of camp is that they leave you better. And this is not just about financially. For me and for my captain, Jan, it was emotionally, okay? So even though breakups happen and all the things in a relationship happened with us, what happened, moreover, is that this is someone I will love eternally and can speak of with a smile on my face because very little trauma did he bring my way, if any at all. Captain Ian was retired CIA when I met him, and he loved to throw that in. But guys, all he did was drive the Exxon and BP and Halliburton and various ships, gas tankers around. Okay, but it was a nice little like bullet point on his resume. He was a polyglot. He was quite professorial. He was a Scottish sea captain with a British mother, so he was ever the gentleman, and he looked like a Viking, blonde and blue. But when I met him, it was a little salt and pepper blonde and blue, but that's okay because I don't mind a silver fox. So that was the energy, just so you get a little background and a picture of the person we're talking about. The lesson that he taught me is for those of you that have ever encountered an F-boy. Because Ian was my soulmate, he was a soulmate of mine, and I'm delighted to have encountered him. It was such a peculiar pairing, and yet it was probably in my life, y'all, I'm gonna tell you the truth and shame the devil, my most comfortable. I've never been more comfortable with a human in my life than Jan. Ever in my life. I've never felt more loved or accepted. I wish for everyone listening that you have an experience of a soulmate like that, where they make you radiate and they see the best in you and they want for you all the things you want, and they don't have a possessive ownership and jealousy. Now, all that stuff comes into play later, yeah. Especially if the connection is good or the sex is scintillating, but initially our connection was 1000% pure, and it stayed that way throughout most of it until our egos got involved, as they will do. But I look back with him with the utmost fondness. But here is a lesson that Jan has for you. The thing about having a soulmate or a flame or a connection divine that comes your way is that the intimacy is off the charts. And I'm not talking about the sex, guys. I'm talking about the communication. Jan was my favorite person to talk to, and he was the best cuddler out of all the people that I've cuddled in my life. And I adored him, and he adored me, and it was felt. But what he did was he communicated with me real life scenarios that I didn't think much of at the time, that have played out to be quite important in my life as I've gone on. In fact, fulfilling his soulmate mission, in fact, obeying the rule of camp and leaving me better than he found me. Moment of hydration. All right, guys. So let's talk about Judy. Judy was one of Jan's, and I say one, this man with his Viking disposition, blonde and blue, and all that jazz, salt and pepper when I got to him, but blonde and blue in his day, and built in a Mike Tyson kind of way for a white guy. I was like, okay, sir, I'm not mad at you. Very, very, very interesting. Um, but he had a woman, a lot of sailors do. What do they say? A woman in every port, right? And he did. He had a few, and he was very open with communicating that with me. He was very charming. If I haven't said it, he was a polyglot, quite professorial. Okay, so he very good with languages, y'all. Let me tell you, I'm not talking about like languages. I'm talking about like the king of Spanish in your ear. Super good with languages, but all with an accent and all with his magic. Well, that means that he charmed Judy, yeah, just like he charmed me. And Judy was his steady person that he would sleep with. Essentially, it was hookup culture for sure, just in his own way, and it just in their own way, minus cell phones and Facebook and tracking and devices and Instagram and swiping left and right. So every time he would land in a certain port, he would come. He said he would immediately head to her house, beeline over there, shower. She'd have a dinner prepared for him, and they would chat a bit, but then they got to the business. And his moment in his life, he was very much about that business when he was in that stage of his life, and he had no shame about it. That's what I loved about him. His sacral chakra was completely grounded and worked through. He was very aware of what made him seductive and or attractive, and very alpha. Okay, very very alpha energy. Had no problem being like, so yeah. And so Judy was smitten, and for years they had that routine. Now, how many of us listening have had a routine with someone like that, where we have given a lot of our body, time, energy, good food, good love, and good everything to somebody who is not really that interested? Spoiler alert. Has he told me, which was a really incredible juxtaposition. Me laying in this person's arms who was my soulmate, and him saying, "My darling, I couldn't wait to get away after we were finished having sex." Now, I'm here with this person, this man that I love, and he loves me. And we're talking about this other thing because when you have a soulmate connection, you can have that kind of intimacy. There was no drama, there was no jealousy. I wasn't mad. I wasn't like, let me find out. It was none of that. It was just me listening to his story. And it was interesting because what I heard and felt was her side, you see? Even though in that moment I was his darling and I was adored, I know what it is to be Judy who's crying behind the door. Yeah, I've been that person, and a lot of us listening have been that person. Sometimes when you're dealing with an F-boy, they will string you along forever, and that's exactly what he did with her, but it was preparing me for my future. Now, what I will say here with Judy is that she always probably tried to escalate the relationship from what he described to me. She did try to escalate the relationship, but he was really content with it. And this was his description, and this is what I need some of you guys to hear. He said, as soon, and he said, and I mean as soon as we finished having sex, immediately, within seconds, I couldn't wait. Sometimes I would get into a shower, sometimes I would stuff myself into my pants, and I would be out of there. And I would hit her up the next time. He didn't say hit her up, but I would call her, I would phone her, I would let her know I was back in town the next time that I was back in town. And that was it. I said, did you ever bring her flowers? Did you ever do anything? He said, I may have done one or two little things, but it meant zero, absolutely nothing. Like, he talked about bringing her something, like someone had given him a gift of box of chocolates, and he'd like opened some and ate them and like took them to her. That's F-boy shit. You see what I'm saying, guys? Mm. That's how your F-boys will try to play you. They give you breadcrumbing, barely anything. And I got the real tea for you here, ladies and gentlemen, because I got it from someone who was sweet talking into my ear, who adored me. So he was very compassionate with me. I didn't see that behavior. I mean, that behavior was present with him. He was definitely a cad. That would be the word. He was a cad. He was very much like, he was European, and he lived that way. When you hear me talk about European marriages and relationships, he taught me about them, and he lived it. It wasn't a put on. It wasn't like I'm trying to get away with something. It was who he was and what he really believed. But with Judy, he didn't give her the dream, right? But she was holding out for one. And this is what he said to me. One day I was with my Norma, which is the person that he met immediately after Judy, or he was seeing, but he decided that she was the prize. And he called Norma his prize. And Norma, he called her Norma the Nazi, actually. Let me explain. Norma actually was descended from Nazis, meaning immediate descent, like her father was a Nazi and had participated in the Holocaust and the horrors of that. And she had grown up wealthy from the spoils of what the Nazis took in, as you guys know the story. And he said, I said, well, what made her so magical for you? He said she was dazzling. She was blonde and she was blue and she was like a movie star, and she took up all the space in the room. And what he was describing was a narcissist. You guys get it? And he told me as much. We discussed it and laughed about it. And his friends and family told him as much. And they discussed it and laughed about it, and also tried to warn him. But when you're under the spell, I put a spell on you. When you're under that spell of enchantment with a narcissist, when they're love bombing you, you miss those clear signs. So Judy, who was malleable, mushy, and loving, loved him so much and wanted more with him, and was probably absolutely obsessed at the time that he ran into her. They ran into each other at a store, and he hadn't called Judy for a few months because he was completely enraptured with his Nazi Norma, and that's what he called her. And I think it's because of her behavior that later showed itself, and not too much later. It didn't take very long for the mask to slip, as it usually does not with a narcissist. And so they were shopping for shoes, and he was doting on his Nazi Norma, and there was Judy in the same store. And he introduced her, this is my fiance, and whatever, not thinking a thing about it. He said he was completely oblivious until he looked into Judy's eyes after he made the introductions, and Norma wandered off and was going to look at shoes or something else. And she said, I'm really glad you're happy. And he said in that moment, he knew what he had done for all those years. I don't know if it takes men or masculines that long to figure it out, but he realized that he had dogged Judy out, that he had treated her like disposable trash, that he'd done it for years and just taken for granted, and used her resources, used her energy, siphoned her sexual creativity, her ability to manifest another relationship, because he refused to give her clarity, because he liked that she'd be waiting when he got off of the ship. He liked that she'd be waiting when he disembarked the ship. He liked the idea of it, is what he said. He said, I didn't want to keep her in her head, but I liked that there was always a warm bed to go to. That's the truth of your F-boys. It's that simple. They don't love you. They don't care about you. They are breadcrumbing you. In my situation, you guys have heard me talk about my situation, but I wish I was on camera so that you could see this. The Six of Pentacles is literally someone dropping something into your hand, right? And I'm making the hand dropping sounds, right? I remember the last time I was around somebody who was breadcrumbing me, and it was Valentine's Day. And it's so funny to me how life goes. I did not expect anything. We were not in the same situation as Judy and Jan. However, I remember her handing me candy and standing above me. My angels made me pay attention to everything in the last moments. You know when your life flashes before your eyes when you're in a highly traumatic situation, everything slows down. That whole week for me slowed down. And this moment I'll never forget, her handing me candy. And I was sitting down and she was standing up. So it looks very much like the card, the Six of Pentacles. And that's about equal give and take, or lack of equal give and take, lack of reciprocity, an imbalanced relationship. It's about third party situations where someone's getting more than the other person in the triangulation. Excuse me, guys. The energy that happened in that moment. She was like, do you want some candy? I could have cared less about it, but I was like, oh yeah, that's whatever. And I was so gracious. Thank you. Which should have been a fuck you. And that's what I thought of. I thought of Judy in that moment. In that moment, as those chocolates hit my hand, those Reese's peanut butter hearts. I don't even know if they were Reese's or if they were like Palmer's or something ghetto. Probably something ghetto. But when whatever wild candy that she was handing to me, I thought about what she was handing to everybody else. I thought about how much I had invested. I thought of Jan in that moment, my soulmate, who had pointed me with a North Star to this moment. I thought of Judy, who never spoke up and never owned it, never really demanded that Jan gave her the right clarity or relationship. And in that moment, I was like, this one's for Judy. The chocolate is sweet, but the exit is sweeter. Judy did not get that because Jan didn't give her that. He chose someone else over her, who eventually, and not so long after, ran him completely through the mud, stole his money, left him, and ended up marrying a railroad magnate who was a magnate who was richer and more wealthier and well off than him, because the Nazi descendants will do what Nazi descendants will do. And there is no honor among thieves. She was a narcissist. He had a very high up military friends, and one of them had advised him in the Air Force, this one's not it, sir. But he couldn't and wouldn't hear of it. He was friends with a Thai diplomat that I got to meet and spend some time with. I met all of his friends, but those two specifically, he was very, very close with. And they both said to him, you, sir, are not only out of order, this one's going to take you for everything. And she did. It was the most traumatic relationship of his life. And I know that because he talked to me about it, right? Still had me transmute and heal the energy. I didn't feel anyways. I had zero attachment. This stuff had happened years before me. However, I understood and never forgot the lesson. And he said to me, when I looked in Judy's eyes, I knew that I had broken her. When I introduced her to my Norma, my Nazi. And he said, and I also knew within a year, as Norma started to turn into Hellspawn, that I was receiving karma. And he said, I thought of Judy. I thought of her sweet back rubs. I thought of her good sex. I thought of her loving me and being patient with me, and I thought I would give anything to go back. But he was in the pull, the undertow, the obsession, and the life ruining that happens when karmics attack. He needed to have that lesson. He said it made him a better man. He said that it caused him to date people differently. It caused him to look at things differently. And after Norma divorced him, because she divorced him, he never was the same again. But he never was one to inflict that level of pain again either. Sometimes you got to go through a Norma, the Nazi, especially if you didn't appreciate Big Booty Judy. It was such a powerful lesson. I did not realize how deeply it would be relevant in my personal life. I thought it was just a funny story that this older guy's telling me. If you haven't made December Romance, sometimes you can think like, oh, have they told me this story before, or they already said that, or I heard it. But now I realize how much wisdom was in every single thing he said. Got me ready for my career. It got me ready for love relationships. It got me ready for other divine connections. It got me ready to understand what I expect from a twin flame soulmate connection. Listen, those are fraught. All of those words can get us into so much trouble. I'm really going to try to stick with divine connection. But the truth of the matter is, he set the bar high. He set the bar really high. I know what real love and intimacy is. I know what real connection and cuddling is. And guys, I've had a couple emails about this, so I want to clarify this. Am I married? Absolutely. Still married to the second? Yes, I am. I have a whole husband. Yes, I do. And I love my husband. But that doesn't mean that these various parts of myself will not be expressed or that they should be suppressed. Patriarchy dictates that I would not have the freedom to talk about my sexuality, my sexual preferences, my identification. Patriarchy should say, you're married, put a lid on it. And a lot of people have felt that way. And some people have written in to say, I love what you're doing because it's made me feel powerful enough to be seen. That's why representation matters. But beyond that, that's why speaking your truth matters. Message, yes, guys, I still have a husband, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand that I'm attractive. And that doesn't mean that I don't understand that beyond any kind of relational attraction, that I'm not attracting my business opportunities or attracting other things and magnetizing things to me. All of that still has to do with the sacral chakra. I'm very aware of that. I don't release that. Y'all have heard me talk about that. I am fully myself in every form, and I show up and I'm not embarrassed of who I am. It's important for you to own yourself and your truth, and those were some of the lessons that I learned from him too. He knew who I was. He knew who I was bisexual. I was dating women while we were dating. It was a beautiful relationship that had as many freedoms in it as it could, and restrictions too. No relationship is perfect, right? But we did not do relationship the way everyone else does it. And for me, and for at that time in my life in that season, it absolutely worked. However, I digress. I just wanted to address that because people are like, but you talk about this and what about this and what about that? Yes, all of these things have happened, and I have a life partner. There is a difference between your life partner, between divine connections, between twin flames, between soulmates, all of that stuff. They mean something. They're not just monikers. We want to just scramble them up in the Vitamix or the Blend Tech and be like, it's too much to figure out. No, there are lines of delineation, and they are able to be figured out, and you have multiples and also overlappings at various times. You can have toxic, dark, karmic soulmates. You can have real high vibing light soulmates. You can have a divine feminine, a divine masculine, all of that stuff, and still have a spouse. Yes, all of these things happen. I know we'd like to think. I got a good lesson about this too, also from the captain, and another young lady in my life many years ago that I was friends with. That your husband isn't always your best friend, nor should he be, or your wife isn't always. We like that ideally, like yes. No, 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 no. You need someone that you can decompress with. You need someone that you can talk about, stressful things with. Sometimes your husbands really could care less, or your wives really could care less. So I just wanted to give that message out there to you. I really feel the energy of Jan coming through. This is definitely, he would want me to say all of this to you guys because he taught me to embrace myself and to not be afraid of my sexuality and my freedom and to express myself. He taught me how powerful I was. One of the things that I remember for him, we were actively dating and happy. But he said to me, and we were on a vacation in Key West, and I'll never forget it. We were in the pool swimming and chatting, and he said to me, I picture you. This was his very weird obsession with Nazi and Jewish dynamics. I don't know, but he was like, with a New York Jewish woman. That's what he said. Like a New York Jewish woman, and she's like a professor, and this and that. And he had this whole idea and dream about who I would end up with because he understood in our May December romance, even though we made it last for many years, much longer than I thought it would, that I was not supposed to be his to keep. A very powerful lesson. The second you start to feel possession of a person, you've already lost the intimacy and the fragility of the connection. If you want to own someone, you've already lost. You see? That was very powerful for me. When I watch people get into obsession when I work with clients or I've watched friends do it, I know that the relationship will inevitably end terribly. Because if you get to that level very quickly, you have lost sight of the truth. We are here to experience one another. Be present in your moments. I laid in that man's arms and he communicated with me things, and I wasn't jealous, about where he had been or what he had done, nor was he of me. In time, those things can grow into a relationship. But as we went through the beginning to the middle and almost to the end, we were free. It was probably the most free relationship I've ever had. Anyway, that's the message here. That's the message. Don't be Judy. Or if you are Judy, know that you're Judy. And take that big booty to someone who's going to appreciate it. Because Judy did end up having romance. After he was going through his divorce, let's wrap up the story. He wanted to talk to Judy again. But Judy was seeing somebody, and she got married. And she ended up with that person. And that happened in a matter of, he said that happened about a year. A year after they ran into each other at the store. He had married his fiancée at the time, and she'd already turned into a nightmare. He was still in the marriage, #European, and trying to go back to Judy, but he knew that, it was going down the drain quickly with Norma the Nazi. You see how that works, guys? And Judy, thank God, actually had moved on. That's the best, guys. Don't fake move on. Don't walk away so they come chase you. Move on. It's so much better if you just move on, and that you're not hoping and wishing and hoping and praying. I was so upset with him as he told me the story, because I had been Judy. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so mean. Why did you do that? Why didn't you like her? So I got a lot of good juicy tea about it, because I interrogated him as if I was Judy's guardian ad litem. I was like, this is unfair for Judy. How come you didn't give her what she deserved? And he said, my darling, I didn't realize how much I was hurting her. She was great in bed, and I just wanted to, like, I was sexually attracted to her, and it was hit it and quit it for sure, but I never quit it. That is where things got obscured. You guys get it? So anyway, I'm going circular now. You get the point. First rule of camp, leave something better than you found it. In any relationship, you should strive to do that. I'm very clear with people I'm in friendships with or relationships with. If we're together and as long as I'm with you, we can, I'm a turbo booster, empath. Understand that about yourself. We rocket lift people into different areas. We help clean up things. We help transmute familial patterns and drama. When I now, before I took that for granted, and I guess this must be a message for someone here to hear, I took that for granted and I didn't realize my power in that regard. And now I say it to people, like when I'm newly involved with someone, I'm like, so here's what's going on. I don't know how long we're going to get to hang out, because that's just the way my chart works. But if we're going to hang out for a while, I don't believe in forever afters anymore. Does that make sense? And I think that has a lot to do with the lack of understanding that you can't possess a person. You can get into that moment where you're like, oh my God, but then you have to like rein it in. And that's how you can really let real kind of energy, you know, begin and get grounded and rooted, so that you don't get into the crazy part. If you're Judy, find your worth and walk away. For Judy, she broke up with Jan that day in the shoe store. Even though he had already abandoned her and moved on and was in love with Norma, his Nazi, that moment, he said he watched her heartbreak. That's when she finally understood, oh, this is never going to go my way, is it? And that's when she walked away. But as soon as she did, how quickly, within a year, she'd already found out a fiance and was married. She'd been holding space for an F boy. I love my Jan. I will love him forever and ever and ever. Amen. I am so grateful that they sent me that beautiful Aquarius. He was a wonderful man in so many ways, and loving and supporting of me in all of my relationships. I had several while we were dating. I had about 3 during the time that we dated, which was fine, because those were the rules we made. And he supported me and counseled me and was like, please don't be. I love him. I just now get him. It took me years and years to go through my own situations to be like, oh, sweet Jan, you were good. You were a good human, and I adore him. But anyway, I wish that for you guys, that you have someone that you adore that way, that a soulmate relationship doesn't just always leave you broken. It was one of the best in my life. I have zero expectations that I ever get anything that good again, because it was just so easy. It was so good. It was so honest. There were no lies. It was just like we talked, we negotiated. I learned so much from him, but I learned you leave things better than when you found them, but also to pay attention to the people that actually love you. He would have given an ounce of his blood to have Judy do a back rub and do that special magic little sexy time thing that she used to do. He loved it, but he was instead in a hellscape with Norma for the next 3 years, getting drugged, and then left anyway. Hilariously left anyway. I mean, I say hilariously only because I was rooting for Judy in the story, if you can't tell. Anyway, guys, that's the message. I have prattled on enough at 3:33 a.m. I think I've done what my angels asked me to do. Please find a love that is good and right for you. Make your own rules in that love. You do not have to subscribe to what patriarchy says you should do. You do not have to subscribe to your tribe. You be brave and make sure that you feel alive. Make sure that you're in a connection that makes you feel like it's possible to thrive, and then rocket booster it. Acknowledge it. A lot of us play all these games and act like I don't know what's happening. No, you know what's fucking happening, guys. We all have been in relationships. We know exactly what is and is not happening. or what we would and would like or would not like to happen, or that we have zero intentions of taking something to another level, or we absolutely have every intention of taking something to another level. Don't play games with yourself. And that's what I tell my clients sometimes when they're like, meh, 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 meh. And I love y'all. I talk to you guys every time, but sometimes I'm dealing with people, myself included, pot kettle, where we're trying to delude ourselves that a thing is or is not happening. I'm done playing games with myself, and that's something I learned over the years, but definitely that first seed was planted with Hyun. He knew what it was too, but it was convenient for him to overlook her pain and her forlornness and her longing because it was inconvenient and he was busy. He had things to do. And then later, Norma was busy and she had things to do, like the railroad magnate. You see how that works? Karma through and through. She never misses an address. All right, guys, I love you so much. I'm going to go back to bed. I have clients, I have family. It's going to be a busy day, but I wanted to send a little bit of uplifting, fun story time and love your way. Come back and join me next time, and we will continue to evolve together.